Man, I don't know how to start it. How could you have seen what happened yesterday coming?
I was shocked, genuinely shocked. It felt like early on Denver came out with a purpose and attitude in the first 3 minutes of the game, and there was that sense of all right, they're going to be okay. And then as the game went on, I was blown away. Never in a million years did I see that coming, of Minnesota being that dominant.
I saw a lot of people oh man, tough night in sports. These games aren't good, and I hear you from a score, prospect wise. It wasn't a good game.
No,
I was glued to it.
Yes,
I couldn't turn it off. Everything about what happened in Denver, Colorado last night kept me watching. I got some homework done with my youngest, and we were supposed to read a book, and I said, give me 10 minutes. And this was when Minnesota was up by 30. I had to keep watching it. I couldn't stop. They took a champion and made them a bunch of whiny, pathetic, sad, complaining group of just awfulness. Just a bunch of bitches. Jamal Murray, I don't know how quickly I flipped, but man, I went from I love Jamal Murray, he's a fun story, to suspend his ass for game 3.
Get him out of there.
Get him out of there. That was unbelievable. They mentally broke that team last night.
They did, there is something to... It's almost hard to believe when you're watching a team who you have seen be so dominant. The word that we've used about Denver multiple times over the last 2 years is inevitable. When you think you have them down, when you think that you have their backs against the wall, they always find a way to win. They did this against the Lakers in how many of their 8 wins from last year to this year, right? 7 of the 8 games they were trailing by double digits, and they'd find a way to come back and win. I had buddies who were texting at halftime of dude, should we bet Nuggets money line? Because that's just what Denver has been the last 2 years.
Oh, they still thought at the half that they could come back against that?
I mean, the odds are crazy, so you're throw $5 on it and see what happens. Sure. I didn't go anywhere near it mainly because of the way that they were acting in the first half. It started, honestly, with Mike Malone running out, going face-to-face with the official.
How did he not get teed up?
That was one of the more embarrassing moments for an official that I've ever seen. That dude was nose-to-nose, spitting in your face. You could read every curse word on his lips through the cameras on the baseline. And to not tee him up there, what are we doing? You can't allow a coach to do that to you. And to see them constantly complain throughout the course of the first half, you could just tell that it was in their heads. And it's one of those things when you're getting dominated to that point, it's like a little brother getting dominated by their big brother, and they go screaming for, Mom! Mom! They want somebody to step in and help them out.
Yep.
Dude, they're beating you up. They're taking your lunch money. They are punking you on national television, and you're just crying and complaining to the officials. There's something about watching a team that's been so talented and so good and so inevitable get humbled to that point, that I know a lot of people are there when the series is over. I bet Minnesota to win the West, so I've hoped to hell that it is, because I want to see Minnesota win this series. I am genuinely jacked up to see, do they have the championship mentality to bounce back from this? Because that was as embarrassing a postseason performance as I can remember in a long time.
Okay, and I understand this, giving a champion the benefit. I did it yesterday. Everything about game 1 told me in the reactionary phase of, oh my God, are they going to win this in 5?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go there because it's the Denver Nuggets. It's the defending champions. It's Nikola Jokic, right? And then you watch game 2. Denver's not winning 4 out of 5 against what I just watched.
I would not think so either.
So the series is over.
I would tend to think so, yes.
Now, 4? Is this going to be a sweep? They did that without Gobert. He missed the game because of the birth of his daughter.
Well, and you mentioned Jamal Murray's not playing in Game 3. Whether he's fine for doing the money sign at the officials or throwing a heat pack like a little toddler on the floor during the game, he's suspended. There's zero.
You think he's going to get suspended?
Dude, if the NBA, he threw something on the floor during play.
Yeah, the coach of Denver basically told the ref he was going to whoop his ass and didn't even get a technical for it.
That's in the moment, at least. The NBA has time to go react to this and see what the dialogue is nationally. You cannot not suspend him for Game 3.
I don't know how you get away with throwing a heat pack. And by the way, the play was still happening. Somebody could have tripped on that thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it was in the middle of the play. He threw it on the floor, directed at the official. You can, if the NBA would be castrated if they don't suspend him for Game 3.
You know what's nuts to me? They reminded me, it reminded me of Kansas City a little bit this year when Buffalo beat you. Remember that game?
I do remember
the
that game.
offsides on who was it? The player that's been a disappointment for them. The fast
Kadarius Toney.
Kadarius Toney, thank you. When that happened and they called it back and we lost the touchdown and then Buffalo won, you remember that like Mahomes yanks his helmet off and just like so unbecoming of a champion.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, oh, you're that kind of winner. You're the when I win, it's all love and dap up, but when I lose, it's and it like for that moment you were like, wow, I kind of hate the Chiefs. And then they fought back and they ended up winning the Super Bowl, but the Nuggets ain't winning the title. It is over. I don't know what evidence you have to throw at me to say they're going to win 4 of the next 5 games.
I got none.
That team, without the Defensive Player of the Year, beat them by a larger margin than they did in Game 1, and we kind of saw some true colors. I do. I think being tested and pushed, it's one thing to be upset, want more fouls. I get that. To be throwing heat packs, to be basically running up to a ref and get right in his face. KCP had a couple moments where you just scream, oh, you didn't call that foul. Everything about that, very unbecoming of a champion. That was an embarrassment. We're going to talk just over at 7:30 in Denver. I want to know if they're kind of embarrassed by the behavior that they showed last night, because that was a champion that got punched in the face and was looking to the corner for help instead of just fighting back.
Yes, instead of punching back. It was, I think, alarming, too, because it's a team that, and Denver has been on postseason runs where they've lost, right? Like, we obviously beat them in a second-round series.
That's why I was so surprised by the behavior, Dirt. They've lost in the postseason before.
We've seen them lose. Last year, though, in the playoffs, when they finally broke through and won their championship and got to the NBA Finals, it was not a very rocky path, if you will, right? They got to play the Lakers in the conference finals. There were 3 of those games that were competitive. They swept LA. Mm-hmm. They get to the NBA Finals. They play, let's be honest, one of the easiest finals opponents that we have seen in modern history.
If you're just talking about statistically speaking, one of the luckiest teams to ever reach the NBA Finals.
I mean, it's up there with like the LeBron-led 2007 Cavs, which at least had LeBron James and nobody else on that roster, right? Like, Miami was probably better than that team, but that team had LeBron. They had a bit of a cakewalk to get to the NBA championship last year. So this is one of those times when now you see them at this championship level of play where they're met with serious and real adversity. Their backs are against the walls. They are fighting for their lives. And that's what you resort to. That's the way that you act. I did lose. I don't, excuse me, I'm not anti-Denver. I don't hate Denver. But there was a bit of respect lost watching them do that. And I'm curious to see how they try and take that anger and turn it into a different performance in Game 3.
Oh, I mean, I don't have to hate Denver per se. I'm rooting for a sweep now. You're going to act like that. I hope you get swept right out of the playoffs.
I do too, because I think if Minnesota's sweeping Phoenix and sweeping Denver, they're winning the West, and I'm winning that ticket, baby, and I would love to see Minnesota in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, we'll get to some audio here from both sides in just a second, but I do think that's kind of the natural takeaway when they go up 2-0 against the defending champions on the road, mind you. If they get past Denver, I don't know if I see it against OKC, and I don't think or know if I see it against Dallas either, and I know they have a twosome that's just as good as any twosome, but, man, that was, and I tweeted this out, without trying to be, exaggerate everything, I think that might have been some of the greatest basketball I've ever watched in a first half or any half ever.
Defensively, that is as good as I've ever seen a team look.
To the point where I was honestly asking myself, of all the great eras of basketball and teams I've seen, which one would fare the best against that defense? And I mean no disrespect.
That was without Gobert, the defensive player of the year, on the floor, too.
Or to be hot takey. But I don't know if there is an offense that has existed that would find success against what that defensive performance was last night. I mean, 80 points?
I know. The only one that stands out is Clay, Steph, and KD in Golden State, because I don't think anybody could ever guard that team.
I'd go back to the Showtime Lakers, because Magic, even if they tried to double-team Magic, he's 6'9", and he could see over the top of it.
Certainly.
Kareem still, the sky hook. You can try and double team him. He was one of the best passing big men. But that's what I have to go back to because of just how big that team was at the time.
Yeah.
And they were fine running up and down the floor, too. So they might be able to beat you up the floor before you're able to set up the defense.
Okay, so you had to go all the way to the 80s. This
I
is kind of
went-
proving my point of
Yes.
like, oh my God, this is something I maybe have never seen in my life, was just the lockdown nature of what they were defensively was unbelievable, and it's one of the best performances from a team in a single game I've ever witnessed in my life.
Again, without the defensive player of the year on the floor.
Yeah.
Right. That's
They were
what makes it so
absolutely. I
incredible.
think the thing, and I believe this is Anthony Edwards' personality. They played fearlessly as a team. After getting the one game, after stealing game one, getting the lead, the mentality wasn't,
We're good.
we got to split, we'll go home. It was, let's get greedy.
Let's bury
Be
this team.
fearless.
Yeah.
They can't handle our defense. Let's go get them.